You are not yet born, and still, you are there, you hover in the hush between the sixth and the seventh day, that strange pause after creation but before anything breathes again. The world is new. Wild. Everything crackles with possibility. Light and dark have just been invented. Time itself is barely stable, still soft around the edges. You imagine the first Shabbat the way a child imagines a storybook garden. But this is not a fable. This is the beginning of the rhythm, the first divine breath out. You see the world cooling, a hush falling over the animals, the wind holding its breath, the soil still warm from the divine fingers that shaped it. And there, at the edge of the garden, a man and a woman, barely understanding yet, step into something that is not work, not sleep, not hunger. It is rest, but not tiredness. Peace, but not stillness. It is Shabbat, not just a day, but a sanctified ceasing. The Torah does not say and God prayed or and God told Adam to rest. It simply says, and God rested. That's it. No sermon. Just example, and so, from the very beginning, rest becomes sacred. Not because it serves productivity. Not because it heals the muscles. But because it is divine. Because even God stopped. You walk through this first garden, hear the rustle of fig leaves, feel the dew underfoot. No one is hurrying. No one is earning. No one is explaining. There is only being. The first couple doesn't need a sitter. They don't need halacha. They just have breath and time. And the setting sun, you think about this, before laws, before temples, before covenants, there was a rhythm. 6 days of movement. 1 day of stillness. Like the beating of a heart, work, rest, work, rest. You are born into this pattern long before you know the word for it. Outside this garden, the world will one day be filled with empire and toil. Pharaohs will rise. Cities will burn. But here, at this origin point, there is only evening, morning, and the sacred in-between. You taste the air, warm, fruit heavy. You imagine God's whisper to Adam, today, you need do nothing. You imagine Adam blinking, confused. But isn't there more to build? And God, smiling, not with commandment, but kindness, replies, no, child. Today, there is nothing left to fix. You know this ache too, don't you? That strange discomfort when the work stops, when silence falls. You've inherited it from Eden, the fear that without doing, you might disappear, but Shabbat gently disagrees. Shabbat is not an escape from the world. It is the world as it was meant to be. Not a break. But a return. The sages will later argue, was this first Shabbat truly restful for Adam and Chava? Or was it already a taste of exile, knowing what they would soon lose? Perhaps even paradise was not free from longing. Still, the image lingers, 2 humans, no tools, no titles. Just presence. The rustle of trees. The hush of a world at peace. A light that is not fire. A rest that is not sleep. You are there, even now, each Friday night. You feel it in the flicker of candles. In the warmth of bread held between hands. In the small silence after the blessing, when you remember the first sunset, when God, all-powerful, all-knowing, simply stopped, and so do you, a soft dusk. A cradle of stillness. The world breathes out. You stand at the mountain, but what you hear is silence. There is smoke, but no fire. Thunder, but no rain. And the mountain before you breathes like a living thing. You are not alone, hundreds of thousands stand with you, trembling, blinking through the ash and awe. But it still feels like this moment is meant for you alone. For your soul alone. For your memory, which is older than your body. You have come from slavery, and the taste of it still clings to your mouth. Mud under your fingernails, calluses on your back. You were not meant to rest. You were made to build cities you could never own, with straw you had to fetch yourself. And now? Now you are free. But you do not yet know what that means, and then the voice comes. It does not speak in thunder. It speaks inside you. A word not heard, but known. Zachar et Yom HaShabbat. Remember the Sabbath day. Remember it? How can you remember something you've never been given, but something stirs? A memory not from your mind, but from your marrow. You remember being human. Before Egypt. Before chains. Before Pharaoh turned you into a gear in his grinding clock of production. You remember that first rhythm, that holy seventh day, and now, it returns to you, not as a suggestion, but as a commandment. Carved into stone, amidst the 10 that hold the universe upright, 6 days you shall labor. And the 7th? You shall not, it is not a reward. It is a rule. As sacred as you shall not kill. As essential as honor your parents. Because to forget to rest is to forget you are not a slave, even the land is commanded to rest. Even your animals. Even the stranger at your gate. Shabbat, the rabbis will later say, is a taste of the world to come, but here at Sinai, it is also a taste of something even rarer, justice, for what is Shabbat if not the first workers' revolt in cosmic history? You feel it in your skin, this contradiction. You are standing on sacred ground. Listening to a holy commandment, and all you can think about is how tired you still are. Freedom, it turns out, is exhausting. But Shabbat says, you don't need to be worthy of rest. You don't need to finish your to-do list. You rest because you exist, because you are no longer pharaohs. The sages will later wonder, why is Shabbat the only commandment given before Sinai, in the manna, in the wilderness? Why does it come early? Perhaps because you cannot receive Torah without first knowing how to stop. How to breathe. How to be. The world outside the mountain never stops. Its gods are made of clocks and sweat. Its prayers are deadlines. Its holiness is efficiency, but here, in this stillness between lightning strikes, you are being told something shocking. You are holy, not because of what you do, but because of who you are, and Shabbat is the sign on your door, this house is human. Miriam's tambourine still swings from your hip. You smell the ash of Sinai, the scent of scorched air and divine ink. You feel both terrified and held, the Torah is not yet sealed. The scroll is still unwritten. But Shabbat is already carved, you will forget it. Many times. You will break it, trade it. Struggle with it. But it will never forget you, it will find you in Babylon. In Rome. In Poland. In Brooklyn. In Tel Aviv. In silence. In song, every week, it will come back. With the same whisper, you are not a slave. And for one day, even in a world that burns and screams and demands, you will light a flame, and the mountain will stand again, in your living room, a stillness inside the storm. A word too holy to finish. In the sandstorm of survival, rest becomes defiance. You wake up to the sound of nothing. No taskmaster's whip. No orders. Just wind sifting through dry tents and the soft murmur of children asking for breakfast. You are in the desert now, far from Pharaoh. But not yet home. And freedom, it turns out, is not a destination, it's a habit you have to relearn every single morning. Your shoes are still worn from Egypt, and your soul is thin as the tents you sleep under. You are no longer a slave, but you are not yet a people. You are between, and in the wilderness, there is no harvest, no trade, no empire. There is only dust, sky, and waiting. Then the manna begins, you hear the rumor before you see it. A frost-like flake, falling in the night. White as coriander, sweet as honey. A mystery you can eat. It comes with rules, gather only what you need, no more. Take double on the 6th day. On the 7th, nothing, you laugh the first time. Of course someone tries to hoard it. Of course it rots. Maggots crawl through the baskets by morning. The desert teaches quickly, but on Shabbat, something strange happens. The extra you gathered the day before. It stays fresh. No worms. No stink. A small miracle, tucked into the dust, you don't know why this makes you weep, perhaps because all your life, food came with sweat. Bread came with brickwork. And here, in this nowhere place, rest itself becomes your ration. The world works differently on Shabbat. The rules of hunger bend, and so you begin to keep time not by calendar or sun, but by the rhythm of bread, Shabbat, 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 work. Work. Work, stop, eat, listen, you hear it in the songs around the fire, not yet liturgical, just instinct. Mothers humming softly. Elders retelling stories. Children asking, will there be manna tomorrow? And the answer, whispered like a secret, not tomorrow. Tomorrow is holy. This is not the Garden of Eden. This is not the grandeur of Sinai. This is the gritty middle, where you do not yet know where you are going. But you begin to know when to stop. Even Moshe, with all his worry, must learn this rhythm. Even the priests, their hands full of blood and law, must cease. And it is in this wilderness, where you own nothing, that Shabbat becomes yours. Not a ritual of wealth, but of poverty. Not robes and gold and polished floors, but bare feet, cracked hands, and quiet. You begin to notice, on Shabbat, the camp smells different. Less sweat, more stew. The air grows thicker, softer. The complaints stop, or at least grow quieter. You do not light candles yet, there is no oil, but you watch the sun dip below the dunes and pretend you did. The sages will later ask, is Shabbat joy or obligation? But here, in the desert, it is survival. A people that does not stop becomes a nation that forgets. A soul that never pauses becomes a machine. You are not a machine, so you bake the manna. You rest your bones. You sing, if you remember the words. And even if you don't, you let the silence do the work. Outside this camp, there are other tribes, other gods. They worship wind and war, the hunt and the horde. They do not understand a people that stops one day a week, not for sickness, not for death, but for nothing. They laugh, let them, because your rest is rebellion, your Shabbat is not a luxury. It is a line in the sand. 6 days we move, one day we remember why. Even in a place with no map, no temple, no king, you are commanded to be human. And maybe, just maybe, God rests too, on a makeshift throne of cloud and fire, smiling as you close your eyes. The wind still blows. The manna waits. The silence is full. Among sacrifices and songs, one day remains untouched. You step through the gates of Yerisham and the noise hits you like incense, thick, sacred, overwhelming. Trumpets blare. Pilgrims shout blessings. Hooves clatter on limestone. You breathe in burnt offerings and myrtle leaves. The city is alive, pulsing with sacrifice and prayer, and at its heart stands the temple, not just a building. A heartbeat. The place where heaven brushes earth, priests move like clockwork, barefoot on cool stone, robes trailing behind them. Silver trumpets glint in the morning sun. There is blood here, yes, but also glory. There are choirs that shake the sky. You find yourself wondering, in all this fire and ritual, what room is left for rest? But then Shabbat arrives, and the temple changes, the roar softens. The rhythm slows. The Levitical choir sings a different song, one with pauses. The sacrifices shift, not more, but different. A double portion, like in the desert. 2 lambs. One offering for the people. One for the day. And in the homes around the Temple Mount, something older stirs. Bread is braided. Oil is poured. Lamps are lit before sunset. There are no clocks yet, but you feel the hour coming. You are not in the desert anymore. You have land now. Cities. A monarchy, even. Shlomo sits on a cedar throne. Gold flows like honey. The temple is tall and beautiful, and yet, Shabbat remains the same. You stop. You bless. You breathe. Even kings are bound by it. You picture David, the warrior poet, setting down his harp as the sun dips low. Imagine Shlomo, robe heavy with wisdom, standing still for once. Perhaps even he cannot answer every question. Perhaps even the wisest man needs to be told, stop. It is here, in the era of judges and kings, that Shabbat becomes less survival and more identity. When the land is yours, rest is no longer rebellion, it is responsibility, because the land, too, must rest. The fields lie fallow in their 7th year. The vineyards are left untouched. Every 7 sevens, even debt is forgiven. Jubilee. A Sabbath of Sabbaths, you begin to understand that Shabbat is not just a day, but a shape. A rhythm that echoes through time, through soil, through economy and law, but the contradiction remains. The temple never truly rests. There is always incense. Always duty. And you wonder, can holiness be noisy? Maybe that's the point. Shabbat in the time of the kings is not quiet. It is full, of song, of meat, of movement. It is joy with structure. Sacred chaos wrapped in divine timing. You know this ache too, don't you? The desire to rest without disappearing. To be holy, but not lonely. Shabbat does not ask you to be silent. It asks you to be present, and outside the city walls, other empires grow. Aram. Assyria. Babylon waits in the wings. Their gods demand conquest. Their weeks never end. Their kings rest only when they die, but your people still stop, still sing, still bake bread before the sun sets. And even if the temple burns one day, and it will, the rhythm will remain, because Shabbat is portable. It cannot be exiled. It cannot be taxed. It lives in the flame. In the breath. In the space between words, and so, you walk through the city as Shabbat begins. You pass merchants closing up. Children gathering wildflowers. Priests adjusting their garments. You catch the sound of a bell, soft, high, and you stop, that's all it takes. One sound, and the world shifts, you are no longer rushing. You are no longer buying or building. You are remembering. You are returning, the king in his palace. The widow in her cottage. The priest, the farmer, the scribe, all kept by the same rhythm. All held by the same silence, all loved by the same God. One flame flickers. A harp is silent. The bells echo into stillness. Even in chains, the 7th day cannot be captured. You sit by the river, but it is not the Nile. It is not the Jordan. It is the Euphrates, slow, wide, foreign, and you are not home. Your harp hangs silent from a willow branch. You haven't touched it in weeks. Your captors once asked you to sing one of the songs of Zion, and you almost did, out of habit. But the words stopped in your throat. How can you sing of Shabbat in a land where you are no longer free, still? The sun sets, even in Babylon, the sun does not forget where west is, so you light a lamp. Not because the Babylonians tell you to. Not because anyone will see. But because you must. Because even in exile, time is still yours. You look around, the ground is flat, the buildings tall, the air thick with empire. Statues of winged beasts tower over every street. Scrolls written in strange tongues hang in the courts. There is order here, discipline, but no rest. Their weeks never end. Their gods never stop, and you, broken, scattered, homesick, stop anyway. You have no temple now. No land. No king. But you still have Shabbat. What a strange thing to hold on to, isn't it? Of all the commandments, this one could have withered first. So impractical, so quiet. But no, it grows stronger in captivity, because now, it is all you have. You remember the words of Yirmiyahu, echoing even here, seek the peace of the city where I have exiled you. And you try. You try to build homes. Plant gardens. Bear children. But every 7th day, you pull back. You return, you become two people, one who works in Babel, and one who rests in Zion. And on Shabbat, the one in exile falls away, and you remember who you are. The sages say that in Babylon, Judaism became a book. But before it became text, it was rhythm. Shabbat keeps you from forgetting, you teach it to your children like a lullaby. Not in Hebrew, they don't speak it anymore, but in symbols. In smell. In gesture. You cover your eyes before the lamp is lit. You sing slow songs. You bless the bread, even if it's barley and not wheat. Even if it's all you have, and the Babylonians don't understand. Why rest if you are conquered? Why sing if your city is rubble? Why do nothing when the world moves on, but you understand something they do not? The one who rests is not powerless. The one who chooses not to toil is still free inside. This is your rebellion now, not with swords, but with silence. There is something sacred about choosing stillness in a land of motion. Something divine about lighting a flame in a place that worships stone. You are not waiting for rescue. You are building memory. One Shabbat at a time. You wonder sometimes, is this what God intended? A people spread out like stars, keeping time by a day and not a place. Perhaps exile is not a punishment. Perhaps it is a planting, and Shabbat is the root. By the river, you close your eyes. You can almost hear the bells of Jerusalem again. Almost taste the wine. You hum the old tunes, cracked with longing. Your neighbor hears, and joins you. One by one, the lamps are lit. No priests. No incense. Just you. Just your breath, just the day that no empire can erase. The river flows on. But you are still. The land returns, but the heart still trembles. The path back is dustier than the one into exile. Fewer trumpets. More silence. The land waits for you, but it doesn't welcome you. Not yet. The fig trees are thin. The walls are broken. The songs don't sound quite the same. You are home, but you don't know how to be here. The Babylonians are gone. The Persian decree has come. You are allowed to return, and you do, not in joy, but in weariness. You bring bricks, not banners. Shovels, not swords. You carry your memories like sacks of grain, torn. Heavy, sacred, and somewhere in the ruins of Yerisham, you set a table. It's not a grand table. The legs wobble. The bread is coarse. The oil is cheap. But when the sun dips low on Friday, you light a lamp. Shabbat has survived exile. And now, it must survive rebuilding. The prophets, Shagai, Zechariah, Ezra, speak of law and purity, of rebuilding the temple, of rededicating the nation. But you speak of rest. You remember Babylon too well. The quiet revolutions by the river. The way Shabbat became your sanctuary. You are afraid to lose that, afraid that in the rush to build altars and courts, the stillness might be paved over, so you keep lighting the lamp. You wake before dawn on Friday to prepare. You grind the flour, knead the dough, fetch the herbs, polish the cup. Not out of luxury, there is none, but because to honor Shabbat in Rubble is to say, we are still a people. The temple will rise again, yes. But you begin to learn that Shabbat is the first sanctuary. Before walls. Before priests. Before borders, and this time, it belongs not just to the holy men, but to you. To the mothers stirring soup. To the scribes re-inking torn scrolls. To the boys playing with pebbles in the street. In exile, Shabbat was a memory. Now, in return, it becomes a ritual. Ezra reads the Torah aloud in the square. People weep. But when the seventh day comes, the tears pause. Joy must take its place. You begin to understand that Shabbat is not mourning. It is the antidote to mourning. It is what keeps you from being swallowed by the past. Outside, there are enemies again. Samaritans, Greeks on the horizon, whispers of tension and new rules. The world does not care that you've returned. It moves on, as always, but you keep Shabbat like a heartbeat. Regular. Relentless. Sacred, you begin to shape your weeks around it. Markets close early on Fridays. Children learn to count by sevens. The calendar breathes in this rhythm, 6. 1. 6, 1, and on that 1, the broken city exhales. It isn't always easy. The laws grow complex. Disputes rise. Should you carry this? Cook that? Walk how far? The joy of Shabbat becomes entangled with fear, of doing it wrong, of dishonoring the gift. But even in the questions, the love remains, because at the end of the sixth day, no matter how unfinished the work, the sun sets, and you stop, you walk through a half-built city. Past scaffolding, and prayers, and guards with tired eyes. You step into your small home. You smell lentils. You hear laughter. You watch the flame dance. This is not Eden. This is not Babylon. This is not yet the world you long for, but it is Shabbat. And that is enough, a table on stone. A light in the wind. The taste of peace, even in the dust. You whisper blessings where soldiers hear curses. You walk quickly, head down. The streets of Yerisham are tense, brittle like dry parchment. Roman soldiers lean against stone columns, bored and brutal, their hands always near their hilts. The city still stands, but the air smells of warning. You are not a slave. Not yet. But you are watched, still, the sun begins to fall, and your hands know what to do. The Romans built roads and aqueducts, arenas and laws. But they did not build Shabbat. And they do not understand it. To them, it is laziness. Superstition. Rebellion. Why would anyone choose to stop? You stop anyway, you duck into a side alley, through a narrow door. Inside, your wife has already cleared the table. The bread is covered with a cloth. The wine is cheap, but it sparkles in the oil lamp's glow. There are no trumpets now. No temple choir. That was smashed. Burned. Carried off in golden pieces to Rome. You remember the smoke, the screams, the day the sacrifices ended. The 10th of Av. You don't say it out loud, but tonight is not Tisha B'Av, tonight is Shabbat. The world outside wants you to disappear. To blend in, give up, become Roman in clothes and tongue and calendar. But you have a calendar they cannot erase, a beat they cannot hear. It lives under your skin. It tells you what day it is, even in the dark, even underground, and so, you gather, in secret rooms. In stone basements. In borrowed houses. You light candles that could betray you. You whisper blessings so softly they sound like breath. You tell your children the stories, not the ones about kings, but the ones about rhythm. You explain, we were slaves. We were free. We rested. And we still do. They ask, even now. You smile. Especially now. The sages, what's left of them, are arguing. Without the temple. Who are we? Can we offer prayer instead of sacrifice? Can study replace incense? Can Shabbat survive with no altar, no priest? You have no answers. But you have a loaf of bread. A lamp. A table, and that is enough. You hear the Romans talking outside. Their language is sharp, clipped, full of commands. You cannot imagine Caesar stopping for a day. You cannot imagine a world where Rome rests, but your world is not Rome, your world is a kitchen filled with candlelight and quiet voices. A room too small to kneel in, yet large enough to hold the Shekinah. Shabbat has always been a contradiction, a day of peace, born in a world of violence. A commandment of stillness, written into the noise of empire. You know this ache too, don't you? The longing to rest in a world that demands your labor. The fear that if you stop, you will fall behind. The doubt that rest is possible when the walls shake, but you stop anyway, even when Rome watches. Even when Judea burns. You stop. You light. You bless, and in doing so, you survive. Shabbat under Roman rule is not grand. It is not triumphant. It is fragile, flickering, like the candles you shield with your hands when the wind pushes through the cracks in the door, but it is alive, and after the flames of the temple died. It is Shabbat that keeps the Jewish soul burning. One day a week, you reclaim Eden. One day a week, you defy Caesar. One day a week, you remember who you are, and knock at the door. A hush falls. The candles keep burning. Every pause is debated into poetry. The world has cracked, but the words have not. You sit in a circle of fire, not flame, but thought. Pages unroll. Fingers point. Voices rise. It is not quiet. It is holy. You are somewhere between memory and blueprint. The temple is gone. The land is conquered, again and again. But in the academies of Sura and Pumbedita, something new is being built, not with stone, but syllables, and at the heart of it all is Shabbat. It begins with a question: what counts as work? Not in theory. In practice. Can you tie a knot? Can you drag a chair? Can you save a child on Shabbat? The sages lean in. One scratches his beard. Another quotes a verse. A third interrupts with a contradiction. A fourth says, "Let me tell you a story." And you listen, not because you care about knots or chairs, but because inside these arguments, the soul of a people is being drawn in ink. Shabbat is no longer only a day of rest. It has become a language. A framework. A fence and a garden. You memorize the 39 melachot, the archetypes of forbidden labor, drawn from the building of the Mishkan. Isn't that curious? That the definition of rest is modeled on the act of creating holiness? As if to say, the one who builds must also stop, and so, stopping becomes a sacred craft. You are not a king. Not a prophet. You are a student. A merchant. A father. But you can quote Rabbi Akiva. You can sing the Mishnah. You can argue whether one may move a lamp on Shabbat if the flame still dances, and that makes you a builder, too. Outside the Beit Midrash, the empires churn on. Rome fades into Persia, then Byzantium. Borders shift. Flags change. But inside, the conversation continues. The page widens. The margins fill. One Shabbat question leads to a dozen more. You begin to realize, Shabbat is not simple. And that is part of its beauty. Because the more you argue about how to guard it, the more you prove how much it matters. The Babylonian Talmud becomes a world unto itself. A palace of memory and motion. And within it, Shabbat is the grand ballroom. Every sage walks through it with their own gait, cautious, joyful, brilliant, afraid. You hear them across centuries. Rav says it is forbidden, Shmuel says it is permitted, and Rava, always Rava, says, let me explain why it's both. And in that tension, that gentle, reverent conflict, you find eternity. You know this ache too, don't you? The fear of doing it wrong. The confusion between freedom and structure. You want to rest, but also to honor. You want peace, but also certainty, and Shabbat, in this age, says, struggle is also sacred. It does not demand ease. It invites awareness. The candles are still lit. The wine is still poured. But now, each act carries a footnote, a lineage of thought. You don't just bless the bread, you remember who ruled it permissible to bake it at dusk, you become part of the chain. And in the stillness of the seventh day, your mind continues to move, not out of worry, but out of devotion. The world outside cannot understand. Other nations build cathedrals, armies, philosophies. You build Shabbat, one halakhic brick at a time. You are not rebuilding the temple, you are building the time around it, and as the sun sets, and the discussions wind down, you close the page. You say a blessing. You lean back, not with certainty, but with connection. A scroll unrolls. A lamp flickers. And the questions keep you warm. You dress in velvet, but the wind smells of exile. The streets of Córdoba gleam in the late afternoon, the walls washed in warm ochre. The scent of orange blossoms curling through the arches. The world, for a moment, feels wide and possible. You wear a robe finer than your ancestors ever dreamed of. Your books are bound in leather. You quote Aristotle in Hebrew. You speak Arabic, Castilian, maybe even Latin. You live in a golden age, or so they say, but come Friday, you return to something older than gold. The sun slips behind the minarets. The world softens. You shut the shutters, pull the curtains. You open a bottle of wine pressed from the high hills near Granada. A silence begins to spread across the tiled floors. And in that silence, Shabbat arrives. Your children run through the courtyard, chasing each other's shadows. Your wife smooths the linens. You sprinkle rosewater in the basin for guests. There is poetry here. There is wealth. But beneath the elegance, you still feel the hum of something trembling, because in Spain, Shabbat is both celebration and shield. You walk through the market in silk, quoting Yehuda Halevi under your breath. My heart is in the east, and I am at the edge of the west. You understand him. You too feel stretched between brilliance and loss. On Shabbat, you host students. Rabbis. Philosophers. You argue halacha in 4 languages. You read Rambam by candlelight and recite Lecha Dodi with melodies born from Arabic makams. The table is full, olives, lamb, pomegranates, philosophy, and yet, even here, among the gardens and fountains, you know it can all vanish. You live at the mercy of kings. Sometimes kind. Sometimes cruel. You walk a tightrope between court and community. One bad harvest, one rumor, one new law, and the gates could close. The gold could tarnish, so you set the table with care. You teach your children not just to sing, but to remember, because Shabbat in Spain is not only a joy, it is insurance. If the world collapses, at least you will still know how to make the halal, still know the prayers. Still know how to stop. The Inquisition is not here yet. Not quite. But you can smell the wind shift. You hear murmurs. You see neighbors change their tone. You wonder, as you light the candles, whether someday your grandchildren will have to light them in secret, but not tonight. Tonight, you bless. You sing Shalom Aleichem with full voice. You recline like a prince at your table, for you are royalty, even in a borrowed land. The peace of Shabbat does not care for titles or borders. You know this ache too, don't you? To live in beauty while watching the edges darken. To feast while fearing the future. To dance with a weight in your chest. Shabbat does not take that weight away. But it lets you rest beneath it. It says, yes, the world is uncertain. But this hour is not. This meal is not. This breath is not. Outside, the church bells toll. A different rhythm. A different world. But you are here, in your courtyard, with your songs, your silver, your trembling peace, and when the final blessing is whispered, you lean back in your chair, close your eyes, and listen. The palace fades. The scrolls fade. The threats fade, only the quiet remains. A velvet sleeve brushes the flame. A voice sings low. A hush lingers like perfume. In a world of pogroms, you guard the flame like it's your last breath. The frost creeps in before the sun sets. It laces the window like lace stitched by ghosts. Outside, the world is cold, gray, and watching. But inside is something else entirely. You shake the snow from your boots. The wood crackles in the stove. You smell soup, barley and bones and black pepper, thick and slow, as if time itself has been stewed. A baby cries. A song rises. A hush falls. It is Friday in the Pale of Settlement, and you are alive, just barely. The Cossacks rode through last spring. The taxes doubled again. The Gentile innkeeper scowls when your son speaks Yiddish too loud. But still, here you are. Setting the table. Polishing the Kiddush cup. Placing your soul back inside your body for one precious night. Ashkenaz is not a land. It's a weather pattern, snow, soot, struggle, but Shabbat is your homeland. You know the rules well. how to twist the wicks, how to tuck the challah under the cloth like a child beneath a blanket. Your mother taught you. And hers before her. Each one a bridge back to a warmer world. You live in a one-room house, but somehow it transforms on Shabbat. The broom becomes sacred. The bread becomes sacred. Even the patched-up coat hanging by the door looks regal in the candlelight. The clock doesn't tick on the wall, not because it's Shabbat. But because you can't afford one. But you know the time by the shadows. By the hush that falls over the shtetl. By the smell of cholent warming under the straw in the oven, the men walk back from shul slowly, singing. The melody is as old as Galicia, older than Minsk, older than exile itself. A tune passed from beards to boots, across every border. The world outside hates you. It calls you strange. Filthy. Unworthy, but on Shabbat. You are a prince. A queen. A scholar. A song. You bless your children with trembling hands. You pour wine, or something like wine. You sing Eshe Chael even when your wife is still wearing her apron and hasn't sat down in hours, and God listens, because the miracle of Ashkenazi Shabbat is not in wealth. Not in rest. It is in defiance through devotion. The Tsar says you are nothing, you respond by lighting a candle. The police tear your prayer book, you respond by singing louder. The winter comes early, you still set the table. You know this ache too, don't you? To keep lighting candles when the world gets darker. To rest, not because you can, but because you must. Because if you don't, you'll forget you were ever human. Shabbat in the shtetl is not comfortable. It is sacred because it is fought for, not in battle, but in memory, not in politics, but in bread. The Talmud is still here, tucked under elbows at the table. The arguments live on in song, in stories, in the way you lift your spoon, and when the snow howls through the cracks, when the window rattles with the wind, you pull your shawl closer and smile, because it is Shabbat, and you are still here. A candle wavers. A bowl steams. The cold stays outside, just for one night. The cow knows it's Friday. You rise before the sun, before the rooster stirs, before the frost lifts off the inside of the windows. You wrap your shawl tight. Stir the coals, and begin. Because in the shtetl, Friday is not a day, it's an orchestration. A slow crescendo toward holiness. The peddler knows it. The water carrier knows it. Even the cow, they say, stops mooing a little softer near sunset, and you scrub the floor until it shines like Jerusalem stone. You polish the samovar. You slap dough against the wooden board until the air smells like rising. There is no money here. No oil paintings. No satin curtains. But somehow, come sundown, every home transforms. Curtains are drawn. Faces are washed. Buttons are fastened. There is pride in every wrinkle. Your husband returns from the bathhouse, steam still curling off his beard. The children line up for blessings, blinking in the light. You strike the match, the candles bloom. The world holds its breath. Shabbat has entered, you have no need for clocks. The rhythm is in your bones, your floorboards, the creak of the front step. The shtetl, this fragile constellation of wooden homes and muddy streets, becomes something else entirely on Shabbat. It glows, and not just the homes. The people, too, change. The beggar in the corner wears a clean shirt. The Rebbe smiles without his usual weight. Even the tailor, whose fingers are always sore, lifts the cup with steady hands. You sing Shalom Aleichem, and for a moment, you believe it. That peace has indeed entered with the angels. That your home, simple, drafty, patched and precious, has become a palace. Outside, the world remains what it is. Pogroms don't pause. Taxes don't sleep. The Goyish landlord doesn't know what Shabbat means, nor does he care. But inside, you are in a different universe. This is the genius of the shtetl, a world made of pauses. 6 days you worry. 6 days you barter. Mend, teach, cry. But on the 7th, you remember who you are. Not because anyone tells you. Because you choose it. Over and over again, your neighbors know the tune of your Zemarot. The children know whose cholent pot always burns a little on the edges. You share more than recipes. You share a rhythm, and that rhythm carries you. You know this ache too, don't you? The wish to pause a world that won't stop. To hold time still long enough to remember the taste of it. Shabbat gives you that. Not by changing the world, but by changing the room you're in. You don't light candles because everything is perfect. You light them because it isn't, because the roof leaks. Because your son's boots are too small. Because your back aches and your hands are raw, and still, you light. Shabbat is the protest, the joy, the lullaby for a bruised people who refuse to forget they are whole. As you tuck your children in, their hair still smelling of soap, you hum an old melody. You don't know who wrote it. Probably some half-blind fiddler from a neighboring village. But it reaches deeper than language, and before you blow out the last lamp, you glance at the window. The snow falls silently, but inside, the silence is full, a table cleared. A lamp flickers low. Somewhere, a child sighs in her sleep. There are no candles, but still, you close your eyes. It should be Friday, you think it is Friday. You've been counting days by scratch marks on wood, or the passing of the guard. Time here is broken, bent into something cruel. But somewhere deep inside, the rhythm still pulses. It is Shabbat, there are no tables here. No challah. No silver. No linens. There is no wine, only steam from soup you may or may not taste. There are no candles, but still, you close your eyes and whisper the blessing, lips moving with no sound, and in that whisper, the world pauses. You are in a barack, or a ghetto, or a hole in the forest. The boots march past. The dogs bark. The train waits. But for one sacred heartbeat, you remember Eden. The sages used to say, more than the Jews have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jews. And here, in the nightmare made real, you understand what that means, because even when they take everything, they cannot take time. Even when they take names, they cannot erase the calendar written into your soul. A girl in your bunk hums the tune to Shalom Aleichem. She doesn't finish, someone coughs too loudly, and she quiets. But you heard it. A flicker of melody in the ash. A man carves a kiddush cup out of wood, his fingers splintered. He will never use it, but still, he shapes it. He needs to remember the curve. A woman wraps 2 scraps of cloth around her arms on Friday evening, as if they were Shabbat candles. Her daughter asks, why? She replies, so I can tell you what they looked like. You know this ache too, don't you, to long for rest in a place that offers none, to remember sweetness when the world has gone bitter. Shabbat in the Shoah is not restful. It is not joyous. It is defiance stripped bare. It is a flicker of divinity in the darkest room. There are those who say, why remember? Why keep it? Why sing when God is silent? But you understand, this is not about God hearing, it is about you remembering, that you are still a soul. Still human. Still bound to something ancient. Even here, a boy tears a crust of bread in half and hands it to the man next to him. He whispers, it's Shabbat. The man nods. Doesn't cry. Just chews slowly, a torn loaf. A holy act, and even in the camps, the ghettos, the forests, there are blessings, not many, but enough to survive one more day. One more week. One more Shabbat. You think of the words, and God blessed the 7th day, and made it holy. And you wonder, what does holiness mean? Here, maybe holiness is the fact that you're still whispering those words at all. That you still know them, that somewhere, inside all this smoke and silence, you still believe there's a 7th day, and when the boots return, when the shouting resumes, when the whistle blows again, you hold that rhythm in your chest like a lullaby, not to sleep, but to live. No flame. No bread. No wine, only breath, and still, it is holy. The same sun that once set over Exile now kisses Jerusalem with light. You walk the streets of Tel Aviv just before sundown, and suddenly, they begin to empty, the cars slow. The buses vanish. The cafes close their umbrellas. You hear doors shutting, not in fear, but in finality. A kind of hush, not imposed, not fearful, chosen, the beach still hums with golden light. Children laugh, but their parents are already calling them in. A city, modern and messy, remembers something ancient. It is almost Shabbat, in the land of Israel. Again, you pause at a crosswalk. A woman in jeans is carrying challah under one arm and flowers in the other. A soldier, gun slung over shoulder, buys wine with a reverence that's almost invisible, but still there. Teenagers in sandals run down the sidewalk, late for dinner. You realize, the people are different, but the rhythm is the same. For the first time in 2,000 years, Shabbat is no longer in exile, and yet, it is not as simple as a return, because the land, though ancient, is young again. Because the memory is deep, but the practice is fractured. Because not everyone lights candles. Not everyone sings. Some drive. Some march. Some resist it. You walk through Jerusalem on a Friday night. The stones glow pink, then gold, then the color of memory itself. Hasidim dance down the alleyways. Secular families clink glasses in apartments above. The streets are hushed, but alive, and you realize, this is not the shtetl. This is not Babylon. This is not Cordoba, this is something new. Here, the argument is not whether you may tear paper on Shabbat, it is whether the state itself should keep the rhythm. Whether a bus should run. Whether a nation born from ashes should be commanded to rest, but the deeper question whispers beneath it all, can a whole people stop, together? You know this ache too, don't you? The longing for unity, for pause, for something to hold the spinning pieces of identity. You want your people to rest. But not out of force, out of longing, and that is what you find here, if you look closely, in the cafe that closes early not because it must, but because the owner wants to hear his wife sing Shalom Aleichem. In the soldier who sets down her phone just long enough to bless the wine with her grandmother, in the bus driver who pulls over, steps out, and lights a candle on the edge of the road, the land remembers, the soil that once rested every 7 years, it knows. The air smells of sabra and smoke and Shabbat. This is not a return to the past. It is a flowering of the old into the new. The sages would marvel, or argue. The prophets would cry, or smile, but the rhythm, the holy pause, still beats here. The western wall shimmers in the twilight. You place your hand on it, warm, worn smooth by centuries of prayers, and you feel the pulse of every Shabbat ever kept. You are not alone, and as the final car disappears from the road, and the first melody rises from a balcony, you close your eyes, not to forget, but to remember, that rest is your birthright, here. Now. Always. The stones breathe. The sky quiets. Shabbat has come home. The skyscraper does not care it's Friday night. But you do. You stand in a New York apartment. 13 floors above the street and watch as the city pulses below you, neon signs flicker, taxis blur yellow across avenues, steam rises from subway grates. It is every century and no century at all, and yet, your hands are steady, because it's almost Shabbat. You pull a white cloth over a folding table. You light 2 candles, their flames small and defiant against the city's electric sprawl. You are far from Jerusalem, further still from the shtetl, but the same light catches your cheek. The elevator dings. Sirens wail. A neighbor's television hums through the wall, but your world narrows, not in fear, but in reverence. This is how Shabbat comes in the new world, through noise. Through glass. Through the buzz of always on, never enough, and yet, you stop, you think of your grandparents, maybe they crossed the Atlantic in steerage, hands blistered, names shortened at Ellis Island. Maybe they ran from Warsaw with only a candlestick and a loaf of rye. Maybe they never made it, but they lit these candles, too. The ingredients are different now, the challah comes from a bakery. The wine is California kosher. The prayer book is printed in bold block English. With transliteration for the kids. You don't always know the tunes. But the melody finds you, the children roll their eyes, but they stay for dinner. Your partner puts away the phone. The dog curls up near the couch like even she understands, it's time to be still, this is not a holy land, it is a land of hustle. Of screens. Of freedom so wide it sometimes feels like falling, and still, you pause, you know this ache too, don't you? The longing to slow a life that never seems to stop. The need for a ritual that reminds you, you are more than your inbox. More than your calendar. More than your hours billed. In America, Shabbat is both harder, and more needed, than ever. Because here, time is money. Sleep is optional. Everything is urgent, but on Shabbat, you declare, nothing is urgent. Except this. You cook slowly. You bless loudly. You laugh between courses. You fall asleep with the table still messy and your soul oddly clean, and outside, the lights keep flashing. The news keeps breaking. But for 25 hours, you belong to no one but your ancestors and your God. You build a palace in time, not in stone, but in the choices you make, to close the laptop, to sing the song, to pour the wine and pass the bread and bless the moment. You think of Heschel's words, that Shabbat is not about space, but time. Not about what you own, but what you remember, and in this place of immigrants and ambition, of assimilation and return, you remember, you light the candles your great-grandmother once lit, in a tenement downtown. You hum the tune your grandfather sang, in a Bronx basement. You keep their rhythm alive, not out of guilt, but love, because Shabbat in America is not about being perfect, it's about being faithful, to memory, to pause, to breath, the dishwasher hums in the background. A child giggles. You smile. The city keeps spinning. But you are still. The notifications fall silent, and suddenly you can hear your own heartbeat. You are surrounded by glowing rectangles, phones, tablets, watches, billboards that blink even when you close your eyes. The world is loud, everywhere, all the time. It vibrates in your pocket. It follows you to the bathroom. It whispers to you as you try to sleep, and yet. You choose to turn it off, you press the button. The screen goes black, a small silence enters the room. And you breathe, it is Shabbat, you live in an age that worships speed. Infinite scroll. Always on. We've built towers out of pixels. We stream our thoughts, trade our time, click through conversations with no breath between them. The seventh day should not survive here, but it does, not because it fits. But because it resists. Shabbat in the age of screens is an act of holy rebellion. You close the laptop. You put the phone in a drawer. You silence the buzz. The world doesn't collapse. It simply waits. Your children complain, of course. No cartoons. No texts. No games. But you see the spark in their eyes an hour later, when they remember how to play chess. Or how to sing Bim Bam in harmony. Or how to listen. You light the candles, still with fire, thank God. Not an app. Not a dimmer. But a real flame, dancing on real wax, burning slow and warm like memory itself. The room changes, not visibly, but spiritually. You begin to feel it again, that ancient breath, from Sinai, from Exile, from Warsaw, from Brooklyn. A rhythm, handed down like an heirloom. You know this ache too, don't you? The longing to be unreachable. The fear that if you stop, you'll fall behind. That someone will post, reply, tag, scroll, and you'll miss it, but Shabbat says, let it be missed. Let it pass. Let it go. Because what you won't miss is your own presence. The taste of bread torn by hand. The echo of your father's melody in your own humming. The sound of your child asking a question. And actually waiting for the answer. You sit at the table. Not to eat quickly. Not to multitask, to linger. This is the gift. This is the quiet brilliance of a people who insisted, even now, even here, that one day each week belongs not to productivity, but to soul. It doesn't always feel spiritual. Sometimes it's chaotic. Sometimes you argue over the soup. Sometimes someone forgot the wine. But even that is part of it, because Shabbat is not about perfection. It's about presence. The rabbis called it Mi'ayin Olam Haba, a taste of the world to come. You think, maybe this is what eternity feels like, not floating through clouds, but sitting at a table, surrounded by people who are truly with you. The outside world will return. The emails, the news, the noise. You know this, but for now, for this breath, this hour, this night, you are free. You've crossed the finish line of the week. Not as a victor, but as a human. Not in exhaustion, but in exhale, you say Haini el Yeshwati with cracked voice. You sip from the cup. You bless your children, and you remember, this is who we are the people who stop, we are the people who light candles, we are the people who still sing, even as the world blinks endlessly around us. You are tired. But not of this. You are full. And yet, you hunger for one more moment before the glow fades, so you sit. And you wait for the silence to deepen, and you whisper, Shabbat Shalom. The flame flickers, the screens sleep, and your soul is awake. You sit in the quiet now, the world finally held at arm's length, no buzzing, no breaking news, no clocks shouting for your attention, only the soft rhythm of your breath, the glow of a flame, and the feeling that, perhaps just for now, you have arrived. You don't need to check the time. Shabbat is not something to be measured, it is something to be felt. It is the pause between the notes that makes the music. In this moment, nothing asks anything of you. You do not need to respond, to achieve, to explain, or even to understand. You only need to be. The week was long. The world is loud. But here, you are safe, held by thousands of years of hands, stories, and songs, cradled by the same breath that once whispered across Sinai, that still echoes in kitchens and synagogues and bedrooms across the earth. And maybe, just maybe, that breath is still with you now, so you close your eyes, you let the silence settle, you remember the flame, the folded linen, the familiar melody that never quite leaves you, you carry them gently, like a lullaby tucked beneath your ribs. You are not alone, from Genesis to now, across deserts and oceans. Through joy and through heartbreak, one sacred rhythm has endured, not out of force, but out of love, and tonight, it wraps itself around you. You rest now, not in sleep alone, but in belonging, in memory, in light, in peace. The world spins on. But you are at rest.